This is Today As It Happened. Good Friday evening. I'm Del Walters, guiding you through our timeline of the day's most important stories, from the ongoing negotiations over funding of the Department of Homeland Security to those high-stake talks between the United States and Iran. So let's jump right in.
Here in Washington, Republicans and Democrats remain far apart on new restrictions for federal immigration agents, something Democrats are demanding in exchange for funding the Department of Homeland Security. Without a compromise, the department will shut down 1 week from today. Scripps News congressional correspondent Nathaniel Reed joining me now live from our D.C. newsroom. So, Nate, Republicans balked at what they called a Christmas list of demands from Democrats. So who do you think blinks first here?
Well, look, I mean, here's the problem. They've got exactly 1 week to iron something out that has eluded lawmakers for a very, very long time. Reforms, changes to ICE that are agreeable not just to Democrats, of course, who've demanded these changes in the first place, but also to Republicans who, again, have a majority but need some Democratic support to get this bill to fund the Department of Homeland Security across the finish line. Democrats releasing their list of 10 demands, Republicans kind of pillaring it for the most part. A member of Republican leadership yesterday saying this isn't 10 demands. It's more like 23 demands because there's a bunch of, subcategories to some of these individual items. One of the requirements in here, or one of the asks rather, removing Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem from her position. Democrats also want to ban face masks, require body cameras, require identification, ban those roving patrols that you see on your screen next to me. I think I'm pointing the right direction. No, this direction. Ban those types of roving patrols in Democrat and other cities all across the country that we've seen kind of a signature of ICE's enforcement thus far. A lot of questions about whether Republicans would be willing to agree to some of these major changes. Senator Eric Schmidt telling me just yesterday he thinks that these requests are basically unworkable. Take a listen. On Democrats' list of potential changes for ICE, are any of those acceptable to you?
I'm thinking about creating a board game called Fantasyland, where Democrats throw a bunch of ridiculous proposals that aren't going to go anywhere. So, look, we've been pretty clear. We're not going to do anything that kneecaps ICE's ability to do their jobs and enforce the laws that both Republicans and Democrats have voted on and presidents of both parties have enforced.
And Stephanie, just a reminder here, what's at stake? If the Department of Homeland Security 1 week from today runs out of funding, that's not going to affect ICE. It's not really going to affect Customs and Border Protection. They got tens of billions of dollars of funding during the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that passed through Congress last year through reconciliation. Republicans doing that alone with no Democrat support. So those operations could likely continue unfettered. What would be affected by a DHS shutdown? TSA employees, the Coast Guard. You could have FEMA employees who would have to go without pay. There's a lot of questions about just how badly that could impact Americans and the impacts of a partial government shutdown for, an extended or, unknown period of time. Reminder, both sides are just so far apart now, Stephanie, unless there's some sort of epiphany. And to be clear, we're not even clear if negotiators are actually negotiating at this point. Unless there's an epiphany, we could really be staring down the barrel of yet another government shutdown with no end in sight.
Well, Democrats proved during the full government shutdown last year that they are willing to wait it out and try to get what they want. Democrats really pushing for changes to immigrations and customs enforcement,
Yeah.
but Republicans are leaning hard into the SAVE Act. Why are they focusing on that right now?
Yeah, some Republican conservatives saying it's absolutely imperative to do a federal takeover, if you will, of U.S. elections, requiring actual physical proof of citizenship to vote in U.S. elections, or rather to register to vote. Now, what would that look like? Real ID likely would not suffice. You'd have to go into either an election office or a DMV. It's not exactly clear based on the text of this law that's championed by some Republican ultra-conservatives, and actually register to vote showing proof of citizenship, be it a passport, a birth certificate, a naturalization certificate, plus an ID. You'd also need to vote with voter ID at every single federal election. Democrats are making clear that they're extremely opposed to this. Republicans saying this is a referendum on the future of the country. Take a listen.
Leader Thune said he wants the SAVE Act passed. We want SAVE America Act passed, SAVE Act plus ID. I think that will happen no matter what. And if it doesn't happen, that's going to be 100% on the Senate. But I definitely don't want to bet against the president because he has a pretty good win record.
The SAVE Act is an abomination. It's Jim Crow 2.0 across the country. We are going to do everything we can to stop it.
There's a lot of pressure on the Senate Majority Leader John Thune to either eliminate the filibuster or bring it up for a vote, requiring Democrats to go on the record here or trying to get this thing passed with Republican slim majority in the Senate. The reality is there are not the votes right now to pass it, especially given that the Senate Majority Leader has ruled out any changes to that filibuster rule, the 60 out of 100 vote threshold to pass the vast majority of legislation. So as it stands, does not seem likely, but there could be a revolt underway. Some Republican conservatives saying it's absolutely imperative to pass this law. Democrats, as you just heard, saying they'll do anything they can to stop it.
And with the slim majority in the House as well, the Speaker can't even really afford any Republican defections if he does try to pass this bill along party lines. Scripps News congressional correspondent Nathaniel Reed, I'm sure you will keep us updated. Thank you so much, Nate.
Now let's take a quick look at some of the other major headlines we're tracking for you today.
A boom in car repossessions across the country is getting the attention of some lawmakers. Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren is now looking into the increase. People are struggling with high car payments, and that's pushing repossessions to the highest level since the Great Recession. As part of her investigation, Senator Warren is looking for any illegal or mistaken repossessions. Google's parent company is going all in on artificial intelligence. Alphabet is planning to spend up to $185 billion in 2026, mostly to help build new AI data centers in the U.S. Now, that is about double the $90 billion they spent last year. The company is coming off a record year for revenue, raking in more than $400 billion for the first time ever. And there are just a few more days to go until Super Bowl Sunday, so have you done your grocery shopping yet? If you have, you might have noticed the staples are a little bit more expensive this year. A typical Super Bowl spread feeding about 10 people will cost about $140, according to a new estimate from Wells Fargo. That is up about 1.5% from last year, but some good news, the cost of football favorites aren't going up quite as fast as other food costs. Prices for groceries overall, those rose about 2.5% from last year.
Coming up on Today as It Happened.
Indirect talks between the United States and Iran, facilitated by Oman, have wrapped in Oman, with Iran's Foreign Minister Araghchi saying that they were a good beginning.
Welcome back to Today as It Happened. Let's return to our briefing of today's top stories.
Following breaking news this hour after the FBI announced the arrest of a suspect connected to the 2012 terror attack in Benghazi that killed 4 Americans. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi says Zubair al-Bakush has been extradited to the United States, and he'll now face murder, arson, and terrorism-related charges. 4 Americans were killed in the September 11th, 2012 incident. Bondi says, if you commit a crime against the American people anywhere in the world, we will find you.
We have never forgotten those heroes, and we have never stopped seeking justice for that crime against our nation. In fact, from day one, Cash and Dan would sit in meetings and say, we're going to get them, and they did.
Two other Libyan nationals have been convicted and sentenced in the U.S. court system for their roles in the attack. And it's a race against time to find Nancy Guthrie, the missing mother of Today's Show anchor Savannah Guthrie and her siblings. On Thursday, the 84-year-old son, Cameron, issued a plea for direct contact with whomever may be holding his mother. He asked the captors for proof that they have his mom and that she's alive.
This is Cameron Guthrie. I'm speaking for the Guthrie family. Whoever is out there holding our mother, we want to hear from you. We haven't heard anything directly. We need you to reach out, and we need a way to communicate with you so we can move forward. But first, we have to know that you have our mom. We want to talk to you, and we are waiting for contact.
Meanwhile, a man accused of sending a fake ransom demand to Nancy Guthrie's family is expected in federal court today. Derek Colella is facing 2 charges for allegedly sending text messages to 2 members of the Guthrie family. The complaint says Colella wanted to see if the family would respond. His messages, though, have not been connected to an earlier ransom demand sent to a local TV station. A chaotic scene played out in Los Angeles Thursday. Police say a 92-year-old driver collided with a bicyclist, lost control, and then slammed into a grocery store. Several people standing in the bakery were hit. Some of them got trapped underneath the woman's car. 3 people died and 6 others were hurt. And at this hour, the driver is cooperating and is undergoing a medical evaluation. Another chilly weekend is upon us. Millions of people from the Midwest to the Northeast are bracing for some of the coldest air of the season. Forecasters say Michigan, Indiana, and Ohio will be gripped by freezing temperatures and up to 2 inches of snow today. And in New York, Philly, and Washington, D.C., wind chills could dip below 0 by Saturday. The United States and Iranian leaders are meeting face-to-face today for the first time since last year, and this comes 9 months after the U.S. bombed 3 of Iran's nuclear facilities. President Trump claimed the sites were, quote, completely and fully obliterated. Scripps News international correspondent Ollie Barrett is joining me now live from London for a bit more of what exactly the goals are for today's talks. Ollie?
Well, Stephanie, it was slightly unclear heading into the talks exactly what the goals were, but the talks have recently wrapped, and we have some sense coming out of the talks, therefore, about what has been discussed. In fact, Oman, which has been facilitating these discussions, say that they were consultations focused on preparing the appropriate conditions for resuming diplomatic and technical negotiations. So in that sense, these were talks about talks. Now, we've had some initial response from Iran's Foreign Minister, Mr. Agrachi, who says that these were a good beginning, these discussions, and he says teams are now heading back to their respective capitals with a view to further discussions in the future. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio had said heading into these discussions that you would need something meaningful would only happen out of these talks if the discussions went beyond the nuclear issue. Well, that was already a bone of contention because Iran had said heading into the discussions that they would only be about its nuclear program. The Americans wanted to discuss the nuclear program and the freezing of it. They wanted to discuss Iran's enriched uranium stockpile, but they also wanted to include discussions around Iran's ballistic missiles and its support for regional armed groups. So there are certainly some differences of opinion about exactly what the aim of these discussions were going to be. They have now wrapped, and as I say, the teams now, we understand, heading back to their respective capitals to brief their governments and work out exactly what happens next.
Talks about talks. What a way for international diplomacy to try to move forward. But while those talks about talks have wrapped, the president has also been repeatedly threatening to attack Iran over their crackdown on anti-government protests. So where do things stand on that front?
Well, Stephanie, they certainly stand with the American presence in the region militarily being beefed up. President Trump has talked about what he describes as the armada of American assets moving towards the region for a military strike if one were to be needed. In terms of the crackdown inside Iran, it has been hard to know exactly how widespread, how brutal that has been, but almost every observer group around the world has concluded that it was widespread and brutal. Some groups believing that up to 7,000 people have been confirmed dead in the repression of the protests that broke out over issues including the poor state of the Iranian economy. Some estimates have that number much, much higher than that, and certainly observers also believe that tens of thousands of people were arrested in the crackdown of these protests. So that is not an issue that has gone away. And indeed, in the last 24 hours, Americans inside Iran have been urged by the US to, in the words of American officials, leave now.
Scripps News international correspondent Ollie Barrett live for us this morning from London. Ollie, thank you very much.
Just ahead on Today As It Happened.
AI is starting to help run your city, from chatbots to traffic systems. But how do you know when it's being used and whether you should trust it? I'm business and tech correspondent Maura Barrett. Coming up, we look at the guardrails local leaders say matter most.
Welcome back to Today As It Happened. I'm Del Walters. Let's continue our walkthrough of the day's other top headlines.
Artificial intelligence is quickly moving into city halls across the country, helping local governments sort service requests, manage information, and communicate with residents. As part of our News Literacy Week coverage, business and tech correspondent Maura Barrett looks at how cities are trying to balance innovation with accountability and how the public can navigate trust in their local leaders.
As AI tools become part of everyday operations, there are understandable concerns about accuracy, oversight, and public trust. So while these tools can help cities work faster, experts say the real test is whether the public understands and trusts how it's being used. I spoke with leaders working at the intersection of AI and local government about the opportunities and the guardrails. You might get a public service announcement or 311 message from your local government and not think twice about AI helping send it. But what about the chatbot on a city's website or traffic lights timed perfectly to keep cars moving and cut down on emissions? AI is showing up more and more at the local level to help cities and counties run smoothly.
There was general enthusiasm at first, particularly from elected officials, to try to integrate these tools quickly, to get more organizational efficiency out of them, and to try to scale.
Chris Jordan helps city leaders navigate AI development through his work at the National League of Cities, which found AI tools can be most helpful in enhancing city services, supporting employee tasks, and helping cities make sense of their data. With 96% of mayors expressing interest in using generative AI, Jordan says public trust comes down to clear, uniform standards, like creating AI-specific privacy policies and labeling when AI is used in public-facing content.
Public listening sessions or task forces can also be appropriate for cities to use if there's a general sentiment of anxiety or distrust about certain technologies.
Some cities taking the extra step when it comes to transparency. Lebanon, New Hampshire posts a public list of every AI tool it uses, while San Jose runs an annual review of how its algorithms impact residents.
For the most part, constituents want faster and more effective city services that make them feel good about how their tax dollars are being spent.
Joe Scheidler is building Helios, an AI tool for policy work. The big hurdle? The perception and reality that AI can get things wrong.
Workforces do not trust generative AI outputs in many contexts and sensitive use cases. And so we've been really laser focused from a product mission perspective on solving the issue of hallucination, AI drift, and baking verification, traceability, and provenance into the user experience.
The success stories are wide-ranging. Dearborn, Michigan uses a translation bot to better serve non-English speaking residents. Washington, D.C. tested an AI tool to make its open data easier to search. And Tucson, Arizona's water department uses AI to spot which pipes are most likely to fail before they do. If you're wondering how your city is using AI, experts say ask questions, look for public meetings, and pay attention to how those tools are explained.
The Trump administration launching a new website for discount prescription drugs. They call it Trump RX, but it doesn't actually fill prescriptions. The web page instead points users to different direct-to-consumer websites where they can make their purchases. Trump calls it the largest price reduction in history.
Novo Nordisk will be slashing the price, as an example, of Ozempic from more than $1,000 to $199, and the price of Wegovy from more than $1,300 to $199. Nobody can even believe it. A 578% difference.
Trump says he pressured the pharmaceutical companies, saying he demanded that they charge the same cost in this country as they do in other countries. A federal jury ordering Uber to pay $8.5 million to a woman who says one of its drivers raped her during a ride in Arizona. It happened back in 2023. The case is considered to be a bellwether for more than 3,000 other pending sexual assault lawsuits against Uber. Uber claims they will appeal the verdict. It says it has a near-perfect record of rides without incident. Lindsey Vonn completing a clean downhill training run today without issue at the Milan Olympic skiing venue. This clears yet another hurdle for Vonn ahead of Sunday's Olympic medal race. The run comes just 1 week after she was injured in Switzerland. She lost control on a jump, and as you can see, had to be airlifted to the hospital. She later revealed that she completely ruptured her ACL and suffered a deep bone bruise. But she says she is still determined to compete in the Olympics. She's 41, documenting her recovery on social media as she continues a comeback after retiring in 2019. Back then, you may recall, she got a titanium knee replacement. The Super Bowl is Sunday, but the event is much more than just a game. Lots of you will be watching this man in the halftime show. Puerto Rican Grammy winner Bad Bunny is the headliner. He's become a flashpoint, drawing anger from President Trump and his MAGA base. Most of Bad Bunny's songs are in Spanish, and he has condemned the administration's immigration crackdown. But he says you don't have to speak Spanish to enjoy his performance.
I know that I told them that they had 4 months to learn Spanish. They don't even have to learn Spanish. They just, it's better if they learn to dance. But I think there's no better dance than the one that can come from the heart.
The NFL saying Bad Bunny has worldwide fame, adding that's why they chose him to perform at halftime. A grand jury has indicted actor Timothy Busfield on child sex abuse charges. He's accused of touching children on a number of occasions on the set of the TV show The Cleaning Lady. Happened between November 2022 and the spring of 2024. His attorneys say the allegations are part of a revenge plot manufactured by the boy's parents. The judge finding that Busfield does not pose a danger to the community and ordered him released while he awaits trial. Coming up on Today As It Happened.
So Kamala HQ is turning into headquarters, and it's where you can go online to get basically the latest of what's going on, and also to meet and revisit with some of our great, courageous leaders, be they elected leaders, community leaders, civic leaders, faith leaders, young leaders. I'm really excited about it.
Welcome back to Today As It Happens, Scripps News end of the day snapshot of the day's biggest stories. Let's pick up where we left off.
So Kamala HQ is turning into headquarters, and it's where you can go online to get basically the latest of what's going on, and also to meet and revisit with some of our great, courageous leaders, be they elected leaders, community leaders, civic leaders, faith leaders, young leaders. I'm really excited about it.
And so on Thursday, former Vice President Kamala Harris rebranding her social media accounts, changing them from Kamala HQ to headquarters. Joining forces with People for the American Way, she hopes to mobilize young voters ahead of the next election cycle. And joining us now to examine the digital strategy behind the move is Parker Butler and Lauren Knapp. So Lauren, let's start with you. Why now? And you know what everyone is going to be asking. Does this mean another run for the White House?
Well, I think the fact that we're restarting these accounts just show that the vice president is taking digital very seriously. And this is the type of work that needs to be going on in between election cycles. And this is much greater than any candidate. The vice president will be involved with People for the American Way. She's going to be on the board. But this is going to be bigger than just the Kamala HQ team. We're going to be uplifting a lot of progressive voices, and we're really excited about it.
Hey, Parker, I know you two work together, but that sounded like a dodge to me, to tell you the truth. Do you believe that this is not a soft launch of a campaign?
No, the purpose of these accounts is for progressives writ large. I think there's an understanding that these accounts have over 8 million followers combined across platforms, and they've been sitting dormant for over a year. That's an incredible asset to those on the left. And the vice president, as Lauren mentioned, recognizes that they can have a greater purpose. You know, we're heading into a midterm election cycle where they can serve an enormous use, and we're really excited about the opportunity.
So, Lauren, as you know, and by the way, Parker dodged the same question that you dodged. Why now? As you know, nothing in Washington happens in a vacuum, so why now?
So these accounts have been sitting inactive for a year and a half, and we're coming up on the 2026 midterms, but these accounts need to be a part of the greater ecosystem. The Republicans have an entire ecosystem that Democrats are really far behind on. And the fact that we have over 8 million people who are really tapped into these accounts during the 2024 election, there's no better time than now to reactivate them and mobilize people ahead of the 2026 midterms.
So, Parker, how does a candidate capture the youth vote? Because poll after poll shows they want to talk about issues. Not being able to afford a home, AI. Is she positioning herself for their vote?
So I would just emphasize the purpose of these accounts are not to be specifically related to speaking on behalf of Vice President Harris. They are being repurposed and housed outside of that purpose. To your point about what young voters want authenticity. The Democratic Party is a party that has often had its messaging be very carefully manicured and very carefully packaged. And that's actually not what Gen Z wants. Gen Z wants to feel like they are speaking to an actual human being. They want authenticity online. And that's what we plan to bring. And to your point, they also want policy. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to talk about progressive policies, and we're going to talk about how this administration and those in the White House, their policies are hurting young people.
Lauren, I was in Chicago for the Democratic National Convention. It could be argued that there was not a better campaign for getting out the youth vote. And yet when all the ballots were counted, the youth vote didn't show up as much as people thought it would be. So does this type of digital strategy, will it translate into people in Gen Z actually coming out to vote?
Well, I think we're starting obviously with the digital push, but we have to go beyond just reaching people online and organizing. And we saw young people start to do that in 2024, but we need to build up this apparatus, and we plan to have the headquarters be a progressive hub for people to be able to engage with these accounts and learn about what's going on day in and day out in the news, and to be able to organize together on the ground in order to have progressive policies in 2026 and beyond.
Lauren Knapp and Parker Butler, both of you, thanks for being with us today. Straight ahead on Today As It Happened.
So this family is legally in the United States because they have a pending asylum case, and they should not be deported until that case is resolved.
You're watching Today As It Happened, Scripps News recap of the day's biggest events. Let's dive right in. Kristi Noem, the Department of Homeland Security, now working quickly to deport 5-year-old Liam Ramos. He is that little kindergarten boy who went viral after he was detained by immigration. Ramos wearing that bunny hat and Spider-Man backpack. Scripps News national correspondent Katie Tubman is tracking this story for us. And Katie, with all the outrage and anger that followed that image of little Liam, a lot of people were surprised to learn that DHS is actually fast-tracking his deportation. What's going on with this case now?
That's right, Del. It has been a disturbing update on a case that outraged many across the U.S. and the world. The U.S. government wants to fast-track the deportation of Liam Conejo Ramos and his father. And as you just pointed out, that's a 5-year-old boy we've seen in now viral photo wearing a Spider-Man backpack and a blue bunny-eared hat as he was detained last month in Minneapolis during an immigration operation. His father was also detained, and the two of them are asylum seekers from Ecuador and have since been released from a detention facility in Texas, but their legal battle continued this week, escalating as the Department of Homeland Security filed a motion to expedite deportation proceedings in the family's asylum case. Now, the family's lawyer called the move uncommon and retaliatory, and Congressman Joaquin Castro, who joined the family back home to Minnesota from Texas, called out the Trump administration on X, saying this morning that the administration is trying to take him again. They are breaking legal precedent in an attempt to break this boy's spirit and all of the Americans who are praying for him. And an immigration attorney told Scripps News that moves like this, expediting the removal of asylum seekers, are a part of the administration's aggressive deportation agenda. Take a listen.
This is just part of a much larger picture, as you know, in which the Trump administration is doing everything it possibly can to quickly detain and deport as many migrants as possible, even migrants who, like this family, have a pending asylum case. So this family is legally in the United States because they have a pending asylum case, and they should not be deported until that case is resolved.
Now, according to the family's attorney, Del, they were following all established protocols for pursuing asylum here in the U.S. and should never have been detained in the first place. The Department of Homeland Security did not immediately respond to a request for comment, but Trump officials, administration officials, have argued that the family did not properly apply for asylum, and they are blaming the former President Joe Biden's border policies on that. The family's lawyers said the government is moving very fast right now, that the child and his father could be deported in a matter of weeks. And a hearing is scheduled for today, and the family's lawyers is requesting more time to respond to the government's motion to deport them. But we'll keep you updated as we hear more about that hearing. Del?
Katie, but the bottom line is the administration said it was going after the worst of the worst, the rapists, the murderers, the thieves, the criminals. It's hard to argue a little 5-year-old boy with a bunny hat and a Spider-Man backpack fits any of those categories.
It is difficult to argue, and that is exactly what the Trump administration is trying to do as a part of this immigration crackdown, saying it's going after the worst of the worst, but right now trying to deport a 5-year-old and his father who are seeking asylum in this country. And of course, this is not the first type of case that we've heard of, but this is definitely one that's captured a lot of people's attention, and it particularly brought a lot of attention to the immigration campaign that we're seeing, targeting all types of people, particularly people who are like Liam and his father, just seeking asylum here, follow the rules, show up at the border, have representation, or just waiting for their asylum case as it's pending through the courts. So more to come there, but definitely not new and definitely shocking in terms of what the worst of the worst looks like in this case.
Scripps News national correspondent Katie Tubman for us live in New York. Katie, thank you very much. There is bipartisan outrage and a changing narrative from the White House, the best way to describe the backlash that continues after President Trump posted a racist image on Truth Social last night. The clip shows former President Barack Obama and his wife Michelle as apes. Now, for years, depictions of black people as apes or monkeys was meant to demean or dehumanize them. The post was taken down, but the damage was done. Now to those shifting narratives. At first, the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, brushed off the righteous indignation, saying it was, quote, fake outrage. But even Republicans were calling out the post, and now the White House saying the president didn't post it. It was some anonymous staffer. Scripps News political director Andrew Rafferty joins us now. And Raf, we have not showed the still, but we're going to do that now. And if you could, give us the story of how this image appeared on the president's social media account in the first place.
Yeah, well, this came during a cluster of posts overnight. The president, it is not uncommon for him to post some missives in the middle of the night, sometimes the early mornings. And this one ostensibly was about the 2020 election. The video that was included in this post was problematic in itself. It was about some conspiracy theories. But at the end, it had this image, the one that we view as important for people to see as we're talking about it as a context. And that defense that you just read from Caroline Leavitt said that this essentially was just part of a video that depicted a number of politicians as various characters from, I believe it's The Lion King. But of course, the symbolism there was not lost on anyone for those reasons that you just outlined. The fact that the Obamas, which just happened to be the first black first couple in American history on monkeys, was problematic, not only to Democrats, who we know are often outraged at the conduct of this president, but specifically Republicans, and the only black Republican in the Senate, Tim Scott. And he really started the movement or sort of the paradigm shift when he spoke out on social media.
Yeah, it's not every day in Washington you actually see bipartisan outrage. Usually they say they didn't see it or they walk away, but really not this time. And you're saying it's not just Tim Scott.
Yeah, it wasn't just Tim Scott, and just because we have it up right now, he says praying it was fake because it's the most racist thing I've seen out of this White House. And then it was Roger Wicker, Pete Ricketts, both Republican senators, Roger Wicker of Mississippi, Ricketts of Nebraska. These are not those sort of bluish states where people are trying to get reelected. And it's worth noting that it's not like we caught them up on Capitol Hill with a microphone in their face. These are folks who sat down at their computer and were compelled for whatever reason to respond to this video. It was up for a while, even after Tim Scott put that out on social media. Truth Social, Donald Trump's personal account, it is worth noting that this is a personal account, ultimately deleted it a few hours later with, again, no real explanation over who put it up there, other than the fact that it wasn't the president himself. So a whole host of issues that probably go along with this, including the fact that the president of the United States is posting racist content, but the idea that staffers, and I doubt we're ever going to get a name of exactly who, are able to access something as important as the president's social media account to post stuff like this should be troubling.
I was going to say 3:09 p.m. right now. We have yet to see an apology from the White House.
Yeah.
and we have yet to find out who the staffer is. Let me ask the hypothetical question this way. If Barack Obama had posted something similar, if Joe Biden had posted something similar, if George Bush had posted something similar, what would Washington be saying?
Well, look, it's kind of hard to even imagine that, given the way that traditionally presidents have conducted themselves, especially on social media. And it is kind of worth taking a step back here. Most presidents before this have used the official sort of White House account, whitehouse.gov related account. That's not what Donald Trump does. And he does at times delete things. He posts a lot of stuff that is, to put it mildly, controversial. Not as controversial as what he posted late last night, but he is known to sort of put his own conspiracy theories out there, and anytime, even if it is a personal account, it lends a certain amount of credence to it. So I don't know, Del, if you have any thoughts about exactly what would happen if there was a reverse of the situation. Again, I think it's hard to sort of imagine that, but I do think it is telling that not only are Republicans speaking out because it was a horrible thing to post, but I think it also shows that Donald Trump or his staffer, whomever it may be, really is sort of losing their finger on the pulse of where the Republican Party is right now and what they are willing to tolerate. Of course, the umbrella being that this is a midterm year.
The president of the NAACP has commented on this. He says President Trump, is trying to deflect from the Epstein files and a failing economy. Do you concur?
Well, look, I think we've seen this president do a lot of stuff to distract, and he's normally pretty good at it. But this one was no doubt a backfire, because the distractions that we've seen resonating with the most sort of widespread attention are also things that really haven't been that good for the White House. I'm talking about Minnesota and those ICE shootings there, both of Renee Good and of Alex Preddy. Looking at polling about what are some of the storylines that Americans are paying the most attention to, Epstein is very high up there. It is only eclipsed, really, by what is happening in Minnesota, or at least in the month of January. And so we've seen time and time again that these attempts to sort of distract from the Epstein files or whatever it may be have not really been successful, and this certainly would fall under that.
Final question before I let you go. What does it say about us as Americans if this then winds up being another of those issues, like the president referring to all African countries as S-hole countries, saying we need to bring more people in from places like Denmark and Norway, trying to end the temporary protective status for Haitians, saying that Somalians eat cats and dogs. What does it say about us?
Well, look, this is a president who is sort of, in some ways, had it both ways, where he's been able to alienate certain communities, but also tout his own success, mostly framed as economic success, to court black voters because he understands how important black voters are. And he did do a lot better in 2024 with black voters than he did in his previous two elections. He got 15%, 21% of black men. And it is a different message for a different group. Whereas for black voters, it was very much about, I'm going to grow the economy and you're going to have good jobs. Whereas for that real political base, the MAGA base, which is mostly white individuals, there is an acceptance or at least a tolerance for some of that racist rhetoric, whether it's the Proud Boys or even going back to what he began his political career with, which is questioning Barack Obama's birth certificate.
Our political director, Andrew Rafferty. Raph, as always, we thank you very much. We'll have more of today's news coming up on Today As It Happened. Thanks for joining us on Today As It Happened. I'm Del Walters with your look at the day's biggest stories. And with that gavel, a look at the big board. Records. All day long, the Dow flirting with record territory, finally crossing the 50,000 point mark for the first time ever. closing right now at 50,125. This is a much needed rebound after days of closing in the red. Bottom line, your 401k is smiling. Scripps News correspondent Mitch McCann joins us now. And Mitch, it is an historic day in the market, good for people who have their retirements in the stock market, but it has been a roller coaster ride. What's caused the markets to shift up and down all week long?
Yeah, it's been a case of whiplash, I think, down on the markets this week. One of the reasons markets were down earlier this week was due to some of the earnings results reported by big businesses across the country. Results were mixed. For example, Meta shares at one point jumped 10% after their earnings report. Alphabet beat expectations but said it was going to double spending on AI, which made investors nervous. And Microsoft also saw its stock fall this week after committing a significant amount of money into AI infrastructure for the next couple of years. So really varied results leading to a volatile market this week. Much of today's result is being put down to investors buying beaten down stocks after large volumes of tech stocks were sold off earlier this week, as I mentioned. If we look at where investors were putting their money today, just a couple of moments ago before joining you, I had a look at some of these numbers. Nvidia, the AI company, was up 7.76%, so a lot of growth there. Broadcom, the semiconductor company, gained 7.29%. And Oracle, which it is fair to say has had a very difficult couple of months, down 27% or so for the month, was actually up 3.08% a short time ago. So that's where a lot of gains were made today. There's also another factor here, perhaps, improving the market. One is this improving economic sentiment. Now, while job growth remains muted, we've talked about that in recent weeks, the University of Michigan's monthly consumer sentiment survey was out today as well. It showed sentiment ticking higher for the second straight month, with inflation fears appearing to ease a little bit. So that exceeded economists' expectations. So there are a few reasons behind today's gains, but the headline is clear. It has been a very positive day for investors after a mixed week, I think.
Mitch, we keep hearing about this bubble, and as you know, bubbles burst. Is this another Wall Street bubble, and if so, when is it going to burst?
Yeah, look, I think there's been renewed concerns this week after some of these results about an AI bubble. And one of the reasons for that, Dal, is that these tech companies, as I mentioned, are spending huge amounts of money on building and expanding their AI capability. I saw one figure in the Financial Times this week suggesting that the collective spend could be around $600 billion from some of these companies. So I think the concern among investors is that this may be somewhat overhyped a little bit and that the results may not match the money that's being spent when all is said and done. So yes, there are worries about this bubble and a possible market correction even. We heard Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan, David Solomon from Goldman Sachs talk about a correction last year. Now, we don't know when this is going to happen, if it does happen, but in light of the volatility that we've seen this week, I think it's something that's going to be watched extremely closely.
Thanks for spending part of your evening with us on Today As It Happened. I'm Del Walters. Have a wonderful Friday night and an excellent weekend.